Star Trek, the next generation. Your love throughout the nation. You're my favourite show. Was in every episode, you're lucky. You don't have to wait for buses. You just step into the transporter and off you boldly go. Mr. Wall's my favourite person.
Welcome to the bOrgCast. We are the Borg, and our purpose is to assimilate Star Trek for the next generation.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Welcome to the bOrgCast. We've got some news for you.
Ooh.
Well, I say news. It was very strange. I was looking at my Twitter feed, and I follow Patrick Stewart, and there was some comment about not realising that you got gay from hanging out with gay people or something along those lines.
I
Like,
remember reading that.
What was that about then? Well, Rod Bell has explained all. Lord Such on Twitter, because apparently the Gruniads outed Patrick Stewart, despite the fact that he's married to a woman.
Yeah, and he's not gay.
Yeah, their logic was because he sent a message of support for Ellen Page, who came out recently, that automatically apparently makes him gay.
Oh dear.
Yes, very odd. The other bit of news is that I watched the motion picture last night. Yes. Because you were out partying.
I was out at Jen's book launch.
Yes, our friend Jen Williams, her book has come out, Copper Promise.
Yeah, it's very good.
I've not had a chance to read it yet.
I'm about 3/4 of the way through. Mm-hmm. It's very good. So
I was left on my Todd with only the motion picture for company. Duh. And yeah, I had sort of Twitter conversation with various people, and JJ made me realise that actually the worst bit about it is like you're watching somebody watch paint dry. You're not just watching paint dry, you're watching somebody watch paint dry. It's that bad. I also read the novelisation of the motion picture at the beginning of the week by Gene Roddenberry, no less. Yes.
See, last night
hasn't aged well.
See, last night when I was telling people that's what you were doing, getting your fix of spaceship porn, they were going, the book, there is a book. Are you sure it's not just 3 pages in a drawing? Or it says,
no.
And the spaceship moves a little bit further out of the dog. And then it moves a little bit further out of the dog.
You can read more about it on my Tumblr site, which I think is Blorg, B-L-O-R-G, blorg2.tumblr.com. Basically, I did a sort of review on that, and yeah, he puts some backstory in, some of which is vaguely interesting, but yeah, it is a relatively short book, and just like the film, it's a sort of massive build-up to nothing, basically, which is all sorted in a few seconds. Good music, though, and the effects mostly stand up still.
See, with music, if you listen to that alone,
yeah,
you can shut your eyes and imagine a better movie.
You probably could. Okay, we've had some general feedback.
Oh, okay.
We had email from Dominica. No feedback because I have a cold. I just wanted to write so you know I'm still an avid listener and your podcast brightens my days.
Oh, thank you.
And I hope you're feeling better soon.
Yeah, get well soon.
Daz Watford wants us to cover Code of Honour.
Oh, that the racist one?
Yeah, it's Planet Africa, yeah. Because we mentioned it in the previous cast. At some point we will be doing just that, along with The Naked Now. That's our next first season project, but as to when this special will happen, I don't know. We had some forum discussion on the bOrgCast forums at Geek Planet Online, including some from JJ.
And she writes, I'm afraid I vehemently disagree with everyone about the nudity and cost of living. I think it's fine for Alexander and Alexander to be having a naked bloodbath, and if the genders were reversed, I think it would be equally fine. It's that thing of imposing our morality and cultural norms on another. Even among humans, many people in many cultures would have no issue with a small child bathing naked with an adult friend of the family. Take saunas, for example. Everyone goes naked. It's not a thing. The nudity is entirely non-sexualised. But Loaxana is not even human. We know that in Betazoid culture, public nudity is not sexualised. See their wedding ceremonies, even in this episode. We don't know about Klingon approaches to nudity, but Alexander is part human on his mother's side and his father was raised by humans, specifically Russians, who use public baths naked. There are problems with the cost of living, although I quite enjoy a lot of it, but Loaxana Alexander bathing nude is not one of them. I think, for me, I would disagree with the idea that nudity is not sexualised in Betazoid culture because sex is a key part of weddings. And so I had always assumed that was part of the reason for the nakedness, is the explicit acknowledgement of the sexuality of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I had always read being naked at a Betazoid wedding as being sexual but normal, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
I suppose part of my problem with Lwaxana and Alexander being naked is that Lwaxana has known Alexander for hardly any time at all. If you had seen
yes,
the relation...
friend of the family is probably a bit strong at this point.
She's not even a friend of the family. This is effectively a stranger taking a child for a naked mud bath.
Yep.
And if we'd had the relationship between the two characters built up over time, I might have interpreted the scenes differently with that knowledge and that relationship. But the lack of that knowledge and the lack of that relationship makes me very uneasy watching it.
Yeah. I mean, all credit to JJ for being able to sort of step out of what our cultural expectations are, but the bottom line is that I sat there feeling very uncomfortable because of our cultural expectations.
Yeah.
I'm well, as we know, I wasn't the only one. And I think, okay, to say that cultural expectations in the future will be different is okay, but we're still going to end up judging them on the basis of our own acceptable standards of behaviour, however sort of time-locked they may be. So, for instance, when we watch the original series Trek and some of the dodgy sexual politics that's going on there is equally repellent because we're judging it through the eyes of our own time, which we're unavoidably going to do, I think.
Yeah, it's not possible.
So it's going to make quite a few people feel uncomfortable. I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's good to feel uncomfortable from time to time. But yeah, I think it's definitely the fact that he's a child and he's a child that she's only just met.
For me that aspect was always
if he was
key.
family, yeah, maybe you could argue that. But yeah. So thank you all. It was good to have a different side to these things. We've also heard from Cheeky Monkey Gin. Hello, lovely orcs. Latest bOrgCast. I was pleased to see a reference to the late, great Shake and Blake, as it was through them that I found the bOrgCast. I've been on board from day one. Oh. I was interested that you likened Kamala's cocoon to a Kinder Egg, sent her in The Perfect Mate. I always thought it looked like a huge locket, see image attached. And yes, lo and behold, it is quite locket-like, yeah.
Yes.
That's in the cough suite. Furthermore, it would have made a perfect throat lozenge for the so-called god from Star Trek V after all that shouting. Mind you, he would have a shock when he got to Liquid Center. As I wasn't as down on the Imaginary Friend episode as you, I took it at face value, and I really thought Isabella was played okay, all things considered. She was unlikable, evil even, and I did wonder if the actress was directed to be like she was, if you know what I mean, unhuman. Yeah, I think that's quite possible.
Yeah, it's possible. That's how she was directed, yes.
Yeah, it doesn't make her any more watchable as a result.
No, but that's not necessarily the actress's fault.
Yeah. Keep up the great work, guys. I was in hysterics with the Homer hysterics from your view of cost of living, drawing unwanted attention to myself in a busy Boots the Chemist. Sorry for any embarrassment caused, Matt.
Yeah, sorry.
There we are, so another different view of episodes. Right, I think we should move on to a high Borg.
A terrifying threat from the past.
Kill it now.
Sparks a moral dilemma.
We can't leave him here. He won't survive.
And violent memories collide.
It's not a person, damn it, it's a Borg.
Now, will the crew seek revenge with a daring experiment?
Sending him back to destroy the others, like some sort of walking bomb.
Or will it lead them into an enemy trap?
And then they're gonna come looking for us. And they will destroy us.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
So what did we think of the trailer?
Makes it exciting.
It does, doesn't it? I think that's one of the better put together trailers, that one.
Yeah.
Doesn't issue any major spoilers, but, it fairly sort of represents a quite sort of tense episode, I think.
Well, having had an exciting trailer, you get yet another shit boring captain's log. They're considering colonising 6 systems in the Argolis cluster.
Now, if you're going to criticise most episodes opening with a captain's log, you're going to be very annoyed because that's kind of the accepted standard. That was one of the things in the motion picture, interestingly, that occasionally they had a captain's log. Whenever that happened, they played the Alexander Courage Star Trek theme on the bottom of it. It was really nice, actually, sort of linking it into the television series that way. But yeah, that's kind of like complaining that, I don't know, Doctor Who's got some Daleks in it, or
Daleks are interesting.
Time travel or something.
No, it's
Captain's log is like sort of part of the basis. I don't know. I wonder if they did them in the remake.
Anyway, there's some sort of reading-y thing. Then they decide to send down an away team, and you get Riker standing up, and I've noticed, because of the way he sits, standing up is difficult for him. It looks like he's trying to keep a turd in.
Oh,
But because he sits with his legs so far apart in the
When he
first
stands
place...
up, yeah.
Sorry.
Either that or he's pulled something.
Anyway, Riker stands up and says, Beverly, need you to be ready for a medical away team. But there aren't any other medical people who've been down.
they're all obviously off that day or something, because literally all we get is Crusher, Riker, and... Who's the other person that beams down?
Oh, I can't remember now. I didn't write it down.
Anyway, it ends up being a 3-man away team. I remember that. Or 3-person away team, I should say.
Yeah.
And the only medical bit is Crusher, who he
Who's
asked to go in the first place.
med kit,
Yeah.
fine, but that doesn't...
Maybe that's what it meant then.
No, but...
But then again, you'd expect her to take that anyway.
You'd expect at least to take a nurse, wouldn't
Oh,
you?
indeed,
Medical
yeah.
away team, because when you've got that one with the terrorists that's all about the IRA but isn't, they've got medical teams there.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
Not, do you mean they're all blue? You'd expect Dr. Solar or Nurse Agawa or... Do you know, it doesn't even have to be a named character, just somebody in blue, non-speaking role, but send them down. Anyway, that sort of brought me out of it slightly. And then it's obviously a Borg cube, but a little one.
Yeah, it's a Borg scout ship, to be precise. Our first view of one, and only view of one, unless you count the sphere that's in First Contact, which is obviously quite a different design. And it's a nice redress of Planet Hell as well, with snow. It
Yes.
actually makes it look different and vaguely realistic for a change, which is good.
I did like the way it looked. And then they say there's weak life signs, and Worf lifts off a piece of thing. So it must be Riker Worf from Crusher then.
Yeah, there you are, that'll be the other one. Well
Yeah,
done.
sorry. And there's a Borg.
Yeah.
End teaser.
Bam, bam, bam.
That's a good
Splendid teaser, yeah.
teaser. And so then you come back, and basically Beverly sees an injured person. She's medical. She's there to help. Hippocratic oath. Worf's like, kill it now.
Yeah. Kill it! Kill the bastard!
Yes. And Picard's concern really is that if you do anything, they're going to trace us. That's Picard's immediate concern. And then Crush is like, well, actually, we've already turned that corner. We're past the point, basically past the point of no return. And therefore, on that basis, Picard says to Beverly, right, beam it up. Presumably at this stage, he's thinking, we can gain knowledge. There might be something to be gained from this, rather than just, yes, Beverly, we can help it kind of thing. I presume that he's thinking that this could be useful.
Maybe. I mean, there's that sense of, the Borg will be back because they always collect bits of their dead, don't they?
Yeah, for recycling.
Which is kind of a nice callback to right back to Q Who, where we first see it in action. And later on, Hugh says that no Borg leave the collective, and I kind of wondered whether that was a reference to, the idea that there's a bit of, even if you end up dying, effectively, there's still a bit of you that gets reabsorbed into the collective.
Some part of your program or your memories or something. Yeah. So the sort of the compromised position really between Worf kill it now and Beverly's it's a patient is to beam the Borg into a detention cell with Geordie having put stuff in to dampen the homing signal, but any medical equipment Beverly needs will be given to her there. So anyway, having organised this, you get Data giving this meaningful look to Troy.
Yeah, Picard stomps off to his ready room, and Data turns around and gives Troy a look, and she's like, I better go and see him, hadn't I? But it's all without words. And the fact that Data picks up on it as well is really interesting. I mean, I guess he's the senior officer on the bridge at the time, so it's kind of up to him to order Troy in. Well, I mean, one would hope she'd have thought to go at it anyway, but yes, they do. They kind of share a moment, don't they? Which is quite nice.
Yes. So Troy goes in, and Picard's really quite gruff and abrupt with her. And he's
Well, she's pretty blunt with him as well, to be fair. I mean, she doesn't pussyfoot around with that, does she?
No, but what annoys me about what she says is she starts to say that, yes, you've dealt with it, but that she's trying to say, but it doesn't mean it won't haunt you. But then when he starts to sort of say, but I'm okay, instead of sort of sitting down and being friendly and approachable, whatever, she goes, they took you, they mutilated you, and it's like,
stab away at that wound, why don't you?
Yeah, exactly, that's kind of what it feels like. It's just like...
It's that great line from Wrath of Khan.
As a physician, you of all people should appreciate the dangers of reopening old wounds.
So I think I can understand why he's so gruff with her. It's almost as though that you can see him thinking to himself, look, if I'm going to talk to anyone, it's going to be Beverly over breakfast with a fucked up mug. So then you've got a conversation with Beverly and Geordie, and she was talking about how the implants aren't working. He's going to need new implants to make him better, but Geordie thinks he knows enough to be able to get it to work, and then Picard's like, how much do you know? Is there a way of getting something back to the source? And basically Picard wants to use this Borg as a weapon. to destroy his own people. So then you have the conversation in the ready room where Beverly just makes them all face up to the fact that we're talking about using him to annihilate his own race. It's interesting, she doesn't use the word genocide. I think if I'd been there, I would have done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's talking about how we need to be honest about what we're saying, and I think that actually if that's what her aim is to make everybody face the truth, then she should use the word genocide, because that is what they're talking about. You know, then it's like there's been no declaration of war, and it's like there won't be. You know, the peace treaty won't work, and yada yada. And I just think, God, this sounds so terrible and so false justification. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've decided this because I'm emotional. Go away.
No, I think he's quite in the right. I mean, yeah, there was a declaration of war. They came within a hair's breadth of assimilating the whole of Earth. There's no hope of negotiation, as he quite rightly says. There won't be any peace talks because they're not interested in that. All they're interested in is absorbing humanity. So. But what struck me about it was that Crusher was coming across as rather naive about him. I mean, quite a right to feel a certain amount of empathy, but you know, you've got to be realistic about these things, and it's all very well being, you know, feeling sorry for the poor Borg, but actually, you may as well feel empathy for a flu bug.
Flu bugs aren't sentient.
No, but and that's where the whole crux of it comes, isn't it? Is because
that's Beverly's point. That's why I agree with Beverly, is because what she's.
But
talking
at this point, there's not been any sense of Hugh being an individual and being.
No,
sentient,
it shouldn't matter. So. Just because they're a hive mind doesn't mean they're not sentient. It shouldn't be the case that... I mean, there must be, surely in the Star Trek universe, other hive or collective consciousnesses that are not malign.
No, you're making me wonder. I can't think off the top of my head. But that's not the issue so much as the fact that, as I said, they're not interested in peace. They will just assimilate humanity.
But then, you know, you think about the propaganda in the first and the second...
Well, propaganda is one thing, but, I mean, to be fair, the Borg have hardly, you know, made a secret of the fact that they want to assimilate the whole of humanity. Resistance is futile. Well, that's not really something you can say, well, yeah, let's talk about that.
No, I'm not suggesting they talk. I'm not suggesting they don't fight. I'm not suggesting they become pacifists. But, you know, how is humanity better than the Borg? How is the Federation better
well,
than the
clearly
Borg?
that's kind of skipping to the end, and you know, sort of Picard comes through. I'm not saying that Picard's completely in the right here. All I'm saying is that actually you've got two extremes here, neither of which are very realistic about the situation to begin with. And yes, they do come quite rightly to the realisation that, yes, they would be exactly like the Borg if they used Hugh in this way. And in actual fact, you know, that they effectively stumble upon a much better solution to the situation, which is to send Hugh back having sampled individuality and see what that does, what effect that has to the rest of the collective. I'll finish the episode now. It was a good one, wasn't it? But yeah, that's kind of the crux of what they're setting it up with two completely
I know, but
opposing
given that
views.
the Federation is supposed to be evolved...
Yeah, but I mean, it's personal for Picard, obviously. Although, having said that, Riker and Worf are clearly right behind him on this as well.
Yeah, exactly. And Jordan says he doesn't have a problem with it, and so's Guinan. Do you know what I mean? I just find it...
Yeah, to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the starting premise that they're completely fine with it, even though it's genocide, it makes me very uncomfortable.
But I think coming from the point of view is that we have no option, there can be no peace. I do sympathise more actually with that approach. I mean, clearly it's not completely right, but I sympathise more with that approach than Beverly's, which is, oh, let's heal them all and kiss them better, and oh dear, they've assimilated us.
Yeah, I mean... But the thing is, she is a medical officer in Starfleet.
Yeah, and you
can't be a pacifist.
No. I'm not saying it's wrong that she does that in this story, because that's clearly her role, and it's completely coherent with the way that Beverly's been up till now, and that's great. I mean, the writing's really good in this story, and you know, the characters react in the way you expect them to react. To be honest, I don't think anybody sort of surprises
Except
you.
Picard.
No.
Picard should be.
No, but Picard's damaged still. That's the whole reason why, you know, Troy has that talk and he's not listening to any of it. That just underlines the fact that Picard has still been damaged by his experience, and you know, the wounds haven't completely healed. Any other species, and he's perfectly capable of making the more empathetic decision. But you know, when it comes to the Borg, you know, he has a blind spot, effectively.
Oh, the line must be drawn here.
Exactly. Well,
you broke your little
Despite
ships.
this experience, of course, things will change very much in First Contact again. So he just kind of keep falling back into that Moby Dick approach.
But then isn't that because of what happens in Descent?
I don't know. Can't remember Descent that well. I'm looking forward to watching that. I remember not enjoying it very much actually when I saw it, but I am looking forward to seeing it just to see how things tee. Because what I have a feeling happens is that then Descent and this whole subplot with Hugh kind of gets forgotten when we get to First Contact, and suddenly the Borg are back to being the big bad with no...
Yeah, but I mean, the whole idea that the Borg don't have any one individual that goes with First Contact.
Well, it does too, but
Yes.
that's another matter.
Yes. Anywho, that you see, Hugh sort of moving around this cell, and they're
He's kind of doing the...
very bad street mime from Covent
Street
Garden.
mime, yeah, that's it. Hugh's makeup costume, I mean, obviously the two kind of merge into each other really good.
Yes.
Obviously it was important. And we have the debut of the hologram eye. The Borg haven't had these things up till now, but they'll become quite a feature of the Borg in future. And they look quite cool as well.
Yes, does look very good. Basically, he needs to feed, so they, Picard's like, arrange to feed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Beverly's like, yeah, he's not just hungry, he looks scared. And actually, he does. If you look at the actor's face...
Very good performance. This is
Jonathan
Del Arco, who actually auditioned for the role of Wesley.
Oh, okay.
He was casting this role as they were looking for an Edward Scissorhand type look.
Okay.
Which you can kind of see, I guess. I mean, he's clearly not quite as gaunt as Johnny Depp, but they've certainly done the makeup in a similar fashion.
And then you get... Now, what looks like Guinan and Picard fencing in a cargo bay?
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be the holodeck or something, but... Yeah, it's a nice return for fencing, though. Last seen first seasons will always have Paris. It appears to be something that Picard does when he's feeling disturbed.
Well, it does look better than the stupid, zappy, bloody laser things.
Yes.
And basically, Guinan is very uneasy. She does this thing of pretending to be poorly, so that...
Picard drops his guard and she goes in and makes her point, yeah. And again, you can completely understand why Guinan is so anti at the moment as well, because, I mean, she's suffered even more than Picard, effectively, maybe not personally, but in terms of her entire race.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then you have the first of many conversations between Geordi and the Borg, and he says he's third or five.
Yes, not 3 or 5, interestingly, which kind of becomes the standard in, obviously, most famously 7 of 9 and all that. This is the only time we have a sort of, what do you call, third fraction followed by a number.
Yeah. And then he does this whole "we are Borg," and Geordi's like, "Who's we? There's only one of you." Mm-hmm. Which then becomes more significant as... It's the sort of thing that when you watch it the first time, you don't think much of it, but obviously on a rewatch, you realise how significant that is. It's the start of putting a question in his mind. Who is he if he hasn't got the voices, if he isn't part
if
of
he's separated from the collective, who is he, yes. And he's in that prop, which has had a few appearances. It was what Data built Lalin in The Offspring, and it was also what Locutus was contained in as well. So.
Yeah. And Beverly says he's like a rat in a cage. And then you have one of my favourite bits of the episode.
What is your designation?
Designation?
Third of 5.
You mean our names? We don't have designations. We have names. I'm Beverly. This is Geordi.
Do I have a name?
Do you want one?
A name?
I'm Beverly. He's Geordi. And you?
You.
You...
No, wait a minute. That's it. Hugh. What do you think?
You.
No, not you. Hugh.
Hugh.
Okay, now, I'm Beverly.
I'm Geordi.
We are Hugh.
Then after this, you get Geordi going to see Guinan, and he's like, "Oh, I'm really not sure about this now. I'm not sure about what we're doing." And I just love the way Guinan goes, "Oh, so now you have a Borg named Hugh." And I love her sarcasm in this. And she also is not like her normal self. Because, I mean, Geordi basically rips her a new one.
Yeah. But again, this... Again, she's got a blind spot where the Borg is concerned. Between Borg and Q, basically, there's two things that get her hackles up, aren't they?
And then they find that there's another Borg scout ship on its way, but it's quite a long way off at this point. It's 30-something hours away. So anyway, having has a new one ripped for her, Guinan does go down and see Hugh, and she talks about her, she says, resistance is not futile. Some of us survived. We scattered. And, she's talking about the pain, and he just looks at her and says, "What you are saying is that you are lonely."
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, whoa.
Borg showing empathy. Very odd.
Yes. That then comes up in a conversation with Geordi, where he's saying, you have no others, you have no other voices, don't you get lonely? And then George explains that's what friends are for. They're people who talk to you when you're lonely. And then he goes, like Geordie and Hugh, which is sweet. I like that. But when Geordie tries to talk to Picard goes, centuries ago when people used animals, sometimes the scientists cared for them, and you're thinking, wasn't that a good thing? Didn't it stop the experimentation?
Yeah, I don't quite understand Picard's argument at this point.
No, it doesn't really work,
his analogy with experimental animals, well, clearly they weren't a threat to humanity. If anything, it was the other way round, wasn't it? So
yes.
Arguably, they should have been left alone. So what are you trying to say here, Picard? That doesn't work.
No.
But again, I suppose you can put it down to him being, it's a blind spot for him, so...
Yeah, but it's just like, wrong analogy. Choose a better one,
quite.
But basically says, unattach yourself. And then you have Picard in his PJs.
Yeah, which look all right. Can't remember if these are the same ones we've seen before, but they seem okay.
Well, you only really see from the top up, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know whether he's wearing his little shorty shorts.
No, I don't think he is, no.
And it's Guinan. And she's come to see Picard, and she's basically saying that, I need you to tell me that you're all right with what we're doing. And Picard's like, if you'll come here to convince me. And she's like, no, actually I want you to convince me. But then it's not too far into the conversation where Guinan realises that Picard hasn't spoken to Borg. And then she turns around and she basically says, if you're going to use this person to destroy his race, you should at least look him in the eye before you do it. And it's interesting that as part of that conversation, one of the things she says is that she is no longer sure it is a Borg. Which I think is key, because if you take the idea that to be Borg you have to have a collective consciousness, then he is something new. He's effectively a new species. So Picard's response is to get the Borg beamed into his ready room and then go, I am Locutus, and try and tell it to assimilate all the crew. And there's some brilliant acting from Jonathan Del Arco. He can see the conflict and the pain on his face.
All will be assimilated.
Must Geordie be assimilated?
Yes.
He does not wish it. He would rather die than be assimilated.
Then he will die.
No. Geordie must not die. Geordie is a friend.
You will assist us to assimilate this vessel. You are Borg. You will assist us.
I will not.
What did you say?
I will not assist you. Geordie must not be assimilated.
But you are Borg.
No. I am Hugh.
It's just like, oh.
And I think this is like the key scene that it either sells the episode to you or doesn't, because you either buy the fact that Hugh has become a new species, effectively has become an individual, becomes self-aware, and therefore is, you can't carry on with thinking of him just as a part of the collective, or you don't buy that, in which case you're looking at a Borg, therefore you just their treatment of him seems completely wet and pathetic.
No, I think that, to me anyway, it seems clear that, particularly with Guinan, I'm no longer sure he is a Borg. I think because when it's you are Borg, no, I am Hugh, that is him saying, I'm different, I'm something else.
Evolving.
Yes, exactly. And because of that, it's now like, what do we do? Do we send him back? Do we offer him asylum? And it's really sweet, because they offer him asylum. They say they give him the choice, but he realises that if he stays with them, that they will be pursued. Because they'll come looking for him, because they know how many bodies there should be. He was third of 5. If they only find 4...
And again, we get that no Borg leaves the collective business.
So he goes back, and then their hope is that he either damages or destroys or changes the Borg as a species through his experience and his understanding of individuality. I mean, before they wrote Descent, I have to say that I always assumed that when he went back, they just decided he was broken. And that was it, and that was the end of him.
Yeah.
And that was my assumption before any other episodes came along, because at the end you get him turning to Geordie mid-transport, and it's quite a sorrowful look. And to me, it had the feel of someone going to the gallows.
Yep.
One thing I would say, though, about that end scene, although it's touching, is the middle Borg with the, I don't know, is it a lamp? Is it a penis? I don't know what it is on his head. It's shite.
All right.
Of the three, you've got Hugh, very good makeup. You've got the other one that you see more of, slightly different, his eyes on the other side, but still good makeup. And then you've got the other one, who just looks terrible and laughable, I'm afraid.
I hadn't noticed him. You'll have to point it out so I can put it up on the Tumblr side.
Okay.
It's also a shame we don't get the sort of iconic Borg music that we had in Best of Both Worlds. I mean, that's because, unfortunately, the composer and the series have parted ways since. You kind of expect that sort of choral music, swelling music. So it does lack a bit with that, and it's just the usual music we've been getting for every story ever since. That sort of wallpaper in a way. But I mean, it obviously it's a good solution to the problem of how do you bring back such an implacable foe as the Borg? And the answer is to do it on a very small, personal, individual scale and make that the whole centre of the episode, which I quite like. It's interesting parallels with Dalek from the first series of the new Doctor Who, and that idea of what happens when you've got a Dalek who's the only one left. Yeah. And I can't help feeling that whoever wrote that episode was drawing quite heavily from this from this episode of Trek. Obviously, the outcome is rather different there.
Yes. And
after all, if you still want an alien threat that can't be neutered so easily, there's always the Dominion in Deep Space Nine.
I thought of that. I thought of the Jemadar as well.
Yeah, and there's no empathy there possible because, although having said that, of course, there's the youngster that Odo sort of takes on. So even then, but ultimately, you've got a foe there that's very, very difficult to beat. And, and I guess, yes, we're always going to end up touching on Voyager, weren't we, in the way the Borg were treated in that, which admittedly has been a long time since I've seen that now, but I was never that impressed. So.
No, that's why they had to invent Species 8472
to make an even more threatening thing, because they
just didn't work. I think the best ones were the ones...
See, the Borg here is still a threat.
Yes.
All right, Hugh isn't as an individual, but individual Borg shouldn't be. And, individual Borg should be an anomaly in a way because they are a collective. But, the species still is. I mean, you've got Geordie standing there, and despite the fact that Picard says, they probably won't do anything because they, and Hugh says that they don't assimilate individuals, they assimilate species. But nevertheless, you do, it's a bit creepy them standing there. So they're still a threat at this point. Whether they'll remain that way by the end of the series and with Descent and stuff, I don't know. But there we go.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a good episode.
Yes, I really enjoyed it.
But, sometimes it's good to have a talky episode that explores issues like that. And I think, the way the characters are dealt with is really good. Yeah, I like
it too.
Shall we find out where other people do?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what the Mark makes of this. Borg, the ethics of genocide. There are some fascinating dialogue scenes where people have their long-standing beliefs thrown into question. Guinan is initially chief among the skeptics. You have a Borg named Hugh, but she visits Hugh in the brig and gradually realises she has doubts of her own. And this translates into a thoughtful scene between Picard and Guinan that considers the moral implications of this potentially genocidal plan. One thing I'll say is this story shows people's ability to actually listen and rethink their previous conclusions, something that often seems hopelessly optimistic. It's nice to see the usual moral yardsticks, Picard and Guinan being the ones with hate in their hearts. What would the sanctimonious version of Picard from Season 1 think if he saw his future self a scant 4 years later discussing annihilating an entire race? Good point. A pre-Wolf 359 world, the Enterprise would never have considered wiping out anyone. But in a post-Wolf 359 world, destroying the soulless cybernetic monsters who want to consume them all is deemed, it's needed enough that they can actually discuss the pros and cons of such an action, rather than simply say, no, we're the Federation and we don't do that. However, let me get this straight. Mr. LaForge, you want to destroy the Borg by showing them an Escher drawing. The computer virus design here strikes me as a deeply unlikely way to cripple an entire race of cyborgs. It's essentially a paradoxical 3D image that cannot exist in real space. Data says this paradox would spread through the collective and cause a massive system failure because of unending calculations and analysis. This strikes me as a very fancy next-generation version of the old original series cliché of Kirk outsmarting the computer with circular logic. Wouldn't it be more likely that the Borg, with all their knowledge, would simply conclude the paradox is a paradox and then purge it from their system? And if it was that good, it should fry Data. Whoops. Yeah, I think fair point. That's definitely one of the weak points of the story, isn't it? Okay, I love this episode, and I love the morality play, but I want to be very clear that I do believe the crew made the wrong choice, and I sometimes think we are so evolved as a society we forget that we didn't always run the Earth. The only reason humanity exists at all is because we were smart enough to kill off the Neanderthals. And had we not killed them as ruthlessly as possible, we would not all be here on the internet instead of scavenging for food on the African plains between lion sightings. The Borg are the new lion on the African plain. There is no morality argument here. They die or we do. Every death, human or not, from that point on is Picard's fault, directly. This is not a question of get better tech than the Borg, as that would be giving them what they want. I also have the view that because Hugh seems nice, the Borg are not evil. It's misguided. I am sure some Nazis were fabulous conversationalists. That does not redeem them. The Borg are hell-bent on the assimilation of all non-Borg species. They have far superior weapons. In their collective mindset, they will not negotiate or compromise. By failing to take the opportunity to introduce a virus, however crap, into the Borg collective, the Enterprise crew has endangered all life in the Federation. This is a grave error. I suppose the moral of this episode rings false. In fact, Hugh should be just converted back into 3 of 5 as soon as he encounters the Borg. Yeah. Whereas I think we've made the point. We don't agree with that one.
No,
because Hugh, they've demonstrated in isolating Hugh from the collective that
he's not a Borg anymore.
He's not a Borg anymore, so you can't really use him in that way.
I suppose, in theory, you could say that they could have done it if they'd been able to heal him and come up with a virus and everything quicker. He wouldn't necessarily have evolved and become...
Well, or if he'd remained, resistance is futile all the way through, clearly it would be very stupid not to send him back, because clearly the Borg would be beyond redemption, to use the theological phrase. But Hugh has proven that actually the Borg are capable of being redeemed. All right, it's going to be very hard to take every single individual member of the collective and sit them down for a quiet chat in a holding area somewhere, but ultimately they've exposed the fact that the Borg can evolve and can become individuals. Anyway, looking down on threads in the forum, Pieman also has a few comments about what Mark wrote, and Mark comes back as well, so there's a whole discussion flourishing there, which we haven't really got time to do all tonight, so do have a look at the Geek Planet online forums, because the discussion is evolving, to the risk of using that word again. Okay, we also heard from Fatbone Smith.
Ooh.
Yes, who I believe feeds back on the Babylon, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. Hello, Orgs. I hope you won't mind if I drop by to offer some feedback on iBorg. Of course we don't mind. We like feedback. He says, this episode demonstrates the essential optimism of Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future. Hugh's nascent individuality, growing to the point that he can decide to return to the collective to protect his new friends, shows that even an enemy as obdurately and implacably evil as the Borg can be redeemed, at least in part. As third of 5, he was just a tool to be used by both the Borg and Picard. But as Hugh, he possesses the ability to make his own decisions. Picard, as a defender of individual liberty, has to respect that, regardless of the threat posed by the rest of the collective. Picard agrees with Data in Redemption Part 2 that the ends cannot justify the means. iBorg shows this principle in practice. Picard won't violate Hugh's individual's autonomy and capacity for free choice once it's clear that Hugh has developed those qualities, even if doing so would rid the galaxy of the Borg. There is perhaps a contrast to be made with the Deep Space Nine episode in The Pale Moonlight. While Sisko doesn't order the killing of the Romulan senator, it takes Garak, who doesn't share Federation values, to do that. He does agree to keep it secret when he finds out about it, making him accomplice to murder. Picard can afford to stick to his optimistic principles despite his feelings towards the Borg, because circumstances aren't so terrible that he has to surrender them simply to survive. While there are a couple of scout ships nosing around Federation space, there's no sign of an imminent Borg invasion, and with the rest of the Federation as utopian as ever, principles of optimism and individual liberty can be prioritised over practicalities. Sisko, on the other hand, is fighting a war against an enemy that is trying to destroy the Federation. He wouldn't have killed the Romulan senator, but when Garak does it and the Romulans enter the war because of it, he's not going to say or do anything that would give them a reason to stay at home instead. With the survival of the Federation at stake, practicalities become more important than principles. I can't help but think that this changes in no small part due to the absence of Gene Roddenberry, without whom stories and characters become much darker and morally ambiguous, especially on Deep Space Nine. One thing that doesn't quite make sense to me, though, is how Hugh's sense of individuality is supposed to affect the Borg collective. The very strong sense of individuality that Picard had when he was assimilated didn't spread throughout the collective, an individuality that he even managed to hold on to while he was Locutus, as the tear in his eye and reaching out to Data with sleep idea demonstrate. Why should the individuality that Hugh gained over a few days manage to do so? Is it because it's his embedded Borg programming that's been altered, and it's that which influences the collective consciousness in a way that a freshly assimilated organic's mind sense of self can't? I don't know. That's what I assumed that they were going for. It's not that somebody has become was an individual and become a Borg. It's the reverse.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's the reverse of that. Was Borg, now isn't.
Yeah.
He continues. I've listened to a few bOrgcasts before, but over the last couple of weeks I've got my act together and listened to them all properly. I don't own any TNG or DS9 DVDs or Blu-rays. I relied on memory, both mine and the Alpha variety, for this. I remember liking this episode, and since it's coming up next, I thought I'd add my thoughts. I won't be able to watch the episodes along with you or feedback with any regularity, but I'm going to keep listening to the podcast because I enjoy it. It's a huge amount of fun, and I'm looking forward to listening to your take on Deep Space Nine as well. Bye for now. Bye. Thank you for the lovely feedback.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Yes. There we go. And yes, you don't have to be watching along. If you do find our prattling entertaining, that's wonderful stuff. Okay, let's find out what Pieman makes of this story.
Hello, Args. Murray the Pieman here to talk about the episode Borg. Avoiding, obviously, any Apple-based puns. So, going on to the episode, I'm about to wield my trans-temporal cudgel on my younger self again, because I remember getting this episode, well, not getting it on video, it was one of my friends got it on video, but we've been looking forward to it. It was another Borg episode. I mean, this is, the last time we saw them was Best of Both Worlds, so we're really looking forward to another action-packed fight against the Borg, up against the wall, against all odds. And instead, at the time, I was kind of thinking, what the hell is this? We get one kiddie Borg and they teach it the meaning of friendship. This is awful. And we were genuinely a bit disappointed, me and quite a few of my friends. On rewatching now, I'm going to have to give him a slap round the ear because this is actually a really good episode. I think taking this stance of humanising a Borg was a really good idea. The Borg have been this implacable foe, this onrushing armour like a lava flow, a swarm of killer ants, and to have one of them humanised, and also to have this big debate, do they wipe them out entirely? And it's discussed, well, I did like Crusher being the sole voice of reason at the beginning, that they have to try and act like humans, and as it sort of spreads throughout the crew, and indeed as Hugh becomes more human. I really liked the way it dealt with this. I'm sure there's some people who would still be, and including probably 14-year-olds, saying, what? You've got an implacable, you've got a foe that could eventually wipe you out. Every encounter has been massively damaging to the Federation, and you decide not to wipe them out when you've got the opportunity? Grr. And indeed, in Descent, we'll see an Admiral getting quite annoyed about them. But actually, watching the episode again, the way things come through, as Geordi comes round, then Guinan, and then Picard, it really works well, just to have them sort of slowly talk around to the fact that, regardless of the fact that he's part of the collective, inside that is an individual human, and that wiping out a species is not the answer. And indeed, we will see there is ramifications for this later on. So yeah, overall, I actually think that's a really good episode. It's actually quite intelligent. It's very, very talky, but it's Star Trek doing an issue, but doing it really well. Just kudos actually as well. Patrick Stewart puts in a really good performance. LeVar Burton does. Gates McFadden does really well. Whoopi Goldberg, and of course I couldn't get the actor's name who played Hugh, but he was actually pretty good as well. He did make you sort of empathise. If I was to criticise, I'd say the sort of 1980s hologram sticker on the eye was a bit rubbish. And maybe I'd have expected the security guards to be carrying phaser rifles rather than just pistols when they go to Borg. But again, even in those early scenes, people were nervous. It was treated. The only thing, I suppose the other thing I could mention is that this episode would have been shorter if the Borg had that stabby assimilate thing that they have in First Contact. But it's also conceivable that they didn't gain that ability until much later on, the Borg being adaptable, and indeed looking significantly different in First Contact. So yes, overall, I actually really enjoyed it. I really thought it was a clever episode, and I'm going to take my time-travelling stick and clout my 14-year-old self across the head. So I will be back to talk about the next phase, which when I saw it last time I enjoyed more than Borg. So let's see how this one turns out then. Until then, bye for now.
Bye. Mentioning the holograms, yeah, I thought was quite groovy, but then perhaps I'm still a child of the 80s. I was trying to... There were toys that had the holograms built into them because they were the thing in the 80s. I think they're supernaturals by the looks of it. I just Googled them. Yes. Visionaries. That's it. Oh, my life. With magic holographic powers. Excellent stuff. And I say, I can't remember what Descent's like, but if it's about an admiral wanting to wipe them out, hey, what do we know about Starfleet admirals? They're clearly always in the wrong.
Yes. I do think it was a good point about how you've got a Borg, you know phasers don't work, why aren't you there with something better?
Yeah, some rifles.
Good point.
Yeah, definitely it would. Cool. Okay, let's find out what Andrew and Tracy think.
Hello, Peter and Anne-Marie. It's Drew and Tracy here, and this is our feedback for Borg.
Well, that was a very sad and thought-provoking episode.
Yes, I know. I really enjoyed that.
You always know it's going to be a good one when the Borg are involved, and especially when it's Next Generation, because obviously Picard has got like the sentimentality of the Borg. But that was really, normally when we're sitting watching an episode, we do have a bit of banter, back and forth as we're watching. But that was just, we were kind of speechless, well, quiet for once throughout the whole episode.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't quite know what to say. It was a really good episode. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Okay, well, let's go through some things. The whole episode is about the fact, do they use Hugh to destroy the Borg? Now, one thing I'd say is, the Borg are like an army, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like an army that is invading, trying to... they're on a conquest of the whole universe.
They're almost like ants, aren't they? They just kind of get out and infect and do whatever.
Exactly. It's all very well to be moral about these things, but when you're at war, you are at war, and if they don't defeat the Borg, then the Borg will destroy everyone else. And I think Picard is right when he keeps distance from Hugh. Everyone else is all meeting him and chatting with him, but Picard is like a doctor. He's keeping that professional distance, and that's what you've got to do in this. When you're against a far superior army like the Borg, you've got to use every advantage you can, and I think they're right to do it.
But it was about moral teachings, wasn't it? And half of it, and Crusher and Geordie wanted to re-educate the Borg and give him an identity, and then hope that he would go back to the ship and be an individual and not a collective or part of the collective. And kind of, that would start a chain reaction, if you like, because that's what he wanted to do. And I thought it was quite sweet at the end when you kind of thought that because he'd been kind of connected back to the Borg,
been reassimilated.
Yeah, and that's it. He'd kind of forgot Geordie, but there was that sly look at the end, and it almost tugged on your heartstrings there because you're like, Hugh is going back to the Borg ship, the cube, and he's going to remember Geordie. So is there potential in the future for another episode where he comes back looking for Picard and Geordie?
Well, I don't want to do any spoilers.
Oh, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Let's just say that.
Okay. When they beamed down, the away crew, which consisted of Crusher, Riker and Worf, come on now.
Yeah.
As soon as they realised it was a Borg vessel, and they lifted up that plank and there was the Borg there, I'm sorry, I would have slammed it down, and I would have slammed it down hard on his face and beamed the rock out of there. You don't want to get involved with the Borg. You don't.
I don't think it was a plank.
What was it then?
It's like a conduit, a bit of metal.
Oh, well, whatever. I would have slammed it down hard. When he took his eye off. Oh, my eye! No. Bang! Bye, Borg.
I'm really glad that we finally got to a decent episode. Is this 6 episodes in, or this is the 7th? We've done 6 so far.
Yeah, quite possibly.
And they've been very mediocre. At last, a great episode.
There's episodes that you can mock, and we have had a giggle, but this was very thought-provoking for a Saturday night. Good episode, but Bit more humour, please.
Onwards and upwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, definitely onwards and upwards,
Yes.
please.
Yes.
And if you're finding Borg a bit of a tearjerker, wait until you get to the inner light next time, folks. Oh boy. Hugh. We will be seeing Hugh again.
Yeah. But again, you've got Drew raising the point that you're fighting for survival, but just because your enemy hasn't signed the Geneva Convention doesn't mean that you can therefore effectively tear it up or ignore it. If you've signed, because there are ethics in war, which you can assume the Federation has signed.
I mean, it wouldn't have been interesting, obviously, clearly, anywhere near as interesting as this episode. But had the episode proceeded that we had Crusher initially saying, well, are you sure that it's right to do genocide? Had Hugh not become an individual, had Hugh not shown empathy, had Hugh just remained your standard Borg, you will be assimilated, and that was the only answer we're going to get out of him, then I think you could make more of an argument for Picard then sending him off to be that instrument. But they've exposed the fact that, as an individual, Hugh is now different and evolved, and therefore it's not ethical to send him back. Be a bit like you find the one good German in the Nazi regime who's willing to stand up and say it's all wrong, but instead of sort of celebrating them and saying try and encourage your fellows to do the same, you just filled him with bubonic plague and sent him back again. Yeah. It's like, that's not really using the right tool, is it?
No. Also, I do wonder whether, they keep talking about him being young. I do wonder whether you're supposed to think that perhaps there's an extent to which his programming hasn't fully taken root, and perhaps there is therefore more capacity for transition and change in a way that an older Borg would maybe that would not have happened. That the reason that they emphasise his youth is that he can still be moulded, kind of thing.
And finally, for this half, we also have some feedback from Mr. Matt. Hello, Mr. Matt.
Hello.
Now, I had a phone conversation with Matt, and he wasn't looking forward to watching this, so it'd be interesting to see what he made of it in the end.
Hello, Orgs. It's the gentleman inextricably known as Cat Bus Matt, or Bus Mad Cat, or some variation thereof, feeding back on Borg. I have to say, I'm not entirely impressed with this year's model. I like the new lightning connector. The fact that that's reversible makes the whole Borg thing easier to charge. Seems to be compatible with the latest version of iTunes, so this is good as well. I can drag and drop my albums onto... Alright, I'm torturing this joke, and it wasn't really that funny to begin with. I remember hating this episode. In my mind, I remember it in my memory, it felt twee and rubbish and all touchy-feely, huggy-wuggy, which actually, when you get down to it, is how I've mostly kept Star Trek The Next Generation in my memory. And then, since revisiting the series for the bOrgCast to feedback to you guys, I'm actually finding increasingly that I'm wrong, and the high points that I remember are not the only high points. And certainly, actually, Borg is a phenomenally good episode. It's a multifaceted morality tale. Examined from so many different angles, it makes your head spin, and it's really intense and really dramatic. Jonathan Del Arco, who again I remember being twee and irritating and annoying, is actually none of these things. He is innocent and naive because effectively he's known nothing but the collective, or at least he has no memory of anything but the collective. So he acts almost like a newborn child, but a newborn child that's quite deadly and has the faculties of an adult. The different relationships at play in the episode are absolutely fantastic as well. Everybody's got their own take on Hugh the Borg. The only person that out and out is rooting for him from the start and trying to save him from the start is Beverly, of course, and she would, being the Doctor and first do no harm. And that doesn't come across as cliched or hackneyed at all. Very, very brilliant that Picard is the last person to speak to him, because as the story goes on, everyone becomes convinced by him and everybody starts doubting. And yet the whole way through, of course, they're making a very good point, which is fundamentally, yes, morally, it is wrong to take a prisoner of war, which is effectively what Hugh is, and return him to his people using him as a biological weapon. But at the same time, there is no hope for negotiation with the Borg as far as they can see at this point. The Borg they just assimilate, destroy. Picard's personal feelings aside, he's quite right. even Troy, touchy-feely hippie Troy, who, normally I can't stand, is pushing this agenda, pushing this point. And yet it becomes increasingly difficult as it goes along. And the resolution to the thing is both gut-wrenching and pretty much the only resolution it can have, to return Hugh to the collective in the hopes that his individuality, the things he has learnt while on board, may transfer to the collective. But he risks losing all of that. He may very well have his memory wiped. He can't necessarily hold on to that. And, his hesitation in leaving and knowing, but his noble sacrifice in leaving, knowing that what's going to happen, is gut-wrenching. I was really upset at the end. I felt really bad for him. So it was a lovely surprise to be so emotionally affected by this episode when I wasn't expecting to be, and I was expecting to hate it. And yet, double thumbs up from me. Absolutely fantastic. Right, I'm going to pop off now, and I will see you in a little bit for feedback on the next phase. Love you, bye!
Love you, bye!
Yeah, intense, I think it's fair to say. And that sense of disorientation as you realise that the arguments, sort of changing the way you think is very true as well. And he made that link with sort of Hugh being they're suggesting that Hugh could be a biological weapon.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, oh, good. I'm glad you revisited it back. Yes. I didn't have really bad memories of it, but I don't remember it being as good as it was when I watched it.
I remember enjoying it, and I remember that it was good and that I liked it.
I do wonder how much of my not remembering it being as good as it actually turned out to be was to do with Descent, though, and that's going to be a really interesting one to find out whether it's going to pee all over this. I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll find out in a little while's time, obviously, before we hit that one, because that's the end of Season 6, beginning of Season 7, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, well, in which case we better move on with Season 5.
Yes.
In a far more logical way, and deal with the next phase.
On a devastated ship,
Enterprise, extend shields.
2 lives vanish into thin air.
Where are they?
Leaving only one tragic conclusion.
You're dead, Geordi.
They're caught in a ghostly limbo.
It's like I'm here, but I'm not here.
Faced with the threat from beyond the grave.
Do not move.
Row!
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
A threat from beyond the grave. You just know he was dying to say that, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, the episode opens, much to Anne-Marie's delight, without a log entry.
Yay!
Worried Picard is worried.
Yes.
Yeah, they're answering a Romulan distress call. And Riker, Worf and Ro, now with a nifty hairband.
Very 90s.
It's an improvement to how her hair was before, anyway.
Yeah.
And Geordi are beaming over with no weapons for obvious reasons, but Ro is less than happy with this.
Now it's time to get anal about space.
Woohoo!
Took a trip on a Gemini spacecraft.
The Romulan science vessel is a redress of Jarok's scout ship from the Defector. The original intention was for the scout ship to have a detachable bridge section, and that led to a sort of modular approach, so we get a different bridge section on this to indicate it's a science vessel, which is nice. And it's good to see a variety of ships for races rather than reusing the same signature warbird design, especially when there's obvious shared design aspects to them as well. So,
but again, this one don't really like. The same reason I don't like the Ferengi one. It's not enough detail on the model.
No, I quite like it. I mean, it's not as nice as the Scout one. It's all a bit functional and ugly, really. But yeah, it's a science vessel. What do you expect?
There's no reason why something functional can't be beautiful. I'm surprised it isn't beige. Put it that way.
This particular design will return as a Nasari Starship in Voyager episode favourite son, apparently.
Right.
In brown. Yeah.
Oh, it was? It
there you go. You get the beige. You get the beige. Anyway, the Romulan crew are putting out fires as the away team arrive, which is a nice sort of effective scene. And you also hear the Romulan equivalent of Red Alert in the background, which we'll hear a few times. There's been some sort of explosion in the engineering gubbins. Their captain is dead, so Science Officer Mirok is in charge. As played by Thomas Kopashi, who will return in Season 7's Emergence as the train engineer. That's that really, really weird holodeck one.
Bollocks, yeah.
And he'll also be the communications officer aboard the Enterprise B in Generations.
Oh, okay. I like Generations.
He also has roles in the other 3 Trek series. Geordi and Ro beam back with a broken thingy coil of some sort. I didn't quite get the name of it, but it's weird. The Romulans seem quite happy with them dismantling their ship and taking it back to the Enterprise.
Because it's already broken.
Oh, possibly, but they'd
I think
still
it's
be able to learn stuff about it.
their equivalent of like an energy coil. It's something to do with power, and it's broken, and it won't work.
Anyway, Chief Brossamer, there's no O'Brien in this for some reason. Possibly because they didn't want him associated with a transporter accident, I don't know. She's on duty and she attempts to beam them back to the Enterprise, but things go horribly wrong. She attempts to send them back to the Romulan ship, but they don't dematerialise.
I like her.
That's another excellent teaser. Yeah, no, she's really good, isn't she?
Chief Brossamer.
Yeah.
It's nice as well to have a woman who's a bit older.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. Around about this time, they stopped always casting very young people, and you start seeing some more sort of senior age folk, just going to show that, people are supposed to live to long ages
See, I think previously the idea was that the older people had got promoted, because the idea was to be good enough to be in Starfleet, you would have been promoted by the time you got to that age, but that doesn't fit with the idea that somebody finds their niche.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like the idea that this is somebody who's found her niche.
And it's a shame we don't see her again in the future, really, but there we go. Picard orders transporter systems taken offline, which is quite sensible.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Neither the sensors nor Troy can locate Ro and Geordi.
Okay, question. How come Troy can't? They're not dead.
Yes, that's amazing, isn't it? This phase device manages to shield them from Troy as well, which is interesting. Yes, that hadn't occurred to me. Very good. It's a very comprehensive phasing shielding cloak device thing.
Well, here's a question, right? You know when there's cloaked ships around?
Yeah.
Can Troy sense
them then?
Because if not, it might not
Doesn't
seem to make sense.
she end up guiding in... dare we utter its name, in Nemesis? Doesn't she end up guiding the target sensors because she can sense where the ship is? So I rather suspect that normally she can, but presumably when people are phased, suddenly she can't, as it transpires. The more closely you look at this one, the more it unravels a bit. Better not to... I mean, that will never occur to me, but yes, there are other issues.
There's a lot that occurred to me, I'm afraid.
Oh dear. Riker reports that the Romulan warp core is set to breach soon unless they repair things. Data goes over with 2 engineers in a shuttlecraft, wisely. And now it's time for... Who's at the... We've got Ensign Sousa, who's been in several episodes this season. She'll be back in season 6 and 7 in a single story in each. Back on the Romulan ship, we have Susanna Thompson, who plays Varel.
Now, she seemed familiar to me.
Yeah, there's a good reason for that. She'll return in season 6 Frame of Mind. She's also Dax's kind of ex in Rejoined. The one who had the relationship with her previous Dax.
Okay.
And she's also the Borg Queen in Voyager, when it's not the same actress that played...
when it's not Alice Krieg, okay.
And she's definitely our most attractive Romulan to date, I can't help feeling.
Although, there are some attractive Romulans in DS9. There's one I like.
That's why I said up to date.
Fair enough.
Anyway, Varel reports that the engine is going critical. They need to eject the core manually. There's a nice physical method of doing that with a couple of levers. Worf takes one and Romulan takes the other, and they literally pull them, and we get to see the core ejection, which is a nice effect as well. So it just shoots off out of the ship.
Very nice.
Picard, back on the Enterprise, walks past Ro, who's lying on the floor of a corridor. She tries to report to the bridge, but gets no response, and as she tries to enter sickbay, the doors won't open for her. Someone else exits, enabling her to enter, but nobody is paying any attention to her, which is kind of freaky. Picard is meeting with Crusher and reporting there was a radiation surge from the Romulan engines which disrupted the away team signal, and as he leaves, he walks through Ro.
Looks cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice effect. It's nice, but it doesn't look quite so good on the DVD for some reason.
Oh, does it not? But on the Blu-ray,
no,
it does look very good.
It's not in the DVD. It's very obvious that that's something weird is going to happen because she looks like she's not quite properly in the scene.
Oh, okay. No, but when we watched it just now, it looked cool.
And then she has the freaky experience of seeing a death certificate being written out by Crusher, which is
freaky.
Yes. There's an energy transfer taking place from the Enterprise to the Romulan ship, and apparently power is measured in colons by the Romulans. Well, it sounded like colons anyway, very odd.
I think it might be something like Kalems or...
Anyway, Data asks permission to plan Geordi's memorial service. Worf is complaining to Riker that the Romulans are asking for a computer. How very dare they, despite the Federation having yoinked half their engine out. That's clearly a security risk, so Riker suggests giving them an old computer, which no doubt runs on the Federation equivalent of Windows Vista, so that's the Romulans buggered then.
Yeah.
Ro goes to engineering, where she finds Geordi in the same state as herself, but they ascertain they can actually touch themselves, so to speak, for now. Ro thinks they're dead.
Oh no, you've earwormed me with that fuck awful song. It's awful.
It is. I'm not sure I can actually bring myself to include that in
this. It's terrible. You couldn't a segment, but do not end with it. We've got to think of a better song by the end of this.
Oh, there's our challenge.
I've got to have a new earworm that's better. Yeah. Please.
Ro thinks they're dead and is rather disappointed with the quality of the afterlife, unsurprisingly. Geordi is rather more sceptical. I'm a blind ghost with clothes. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, you see, the moment she says those things, I just thought, yes, but they're part of your identity, and that's why they're there.
Yeah.
Particularly when I watched this the first time round, I didn't know what had actually happened. I thought, yes, but having a visor is part of your identity, and your uniform is part of your identity, therefore you still have it. Sorry, it's just where my brain went.
Clearly Geordi doesn't feel it's that important a part of his identity.
No. I mean, you can understand the question.
Yeah. Geordi goes off to the transporter room to figure out what's happened. Data is doing likewise, exploring chronoton particles present, having been carried over with the transporter beam, and apparently they're dangerous to the ship's systems. Ro hitches a lift to the bridge to say goodbye to everyone, including the con. She sort of strokes lovingly. Oh, bless her. Riker walks in with Picard talking about experimental components aboard the Romulan ship, so they can get the sense that something's up. Riker asks to speak about Ro at the memorial service. Possibly as a result of something they shared in Conundrum.
That's what I thought.
Nice bit of continuity there. Riker leaves and Ro makes her peace with Picard. And she says she's still intimidated by him, but thanks him for trusting her when no one else did. That's a nice scene, which again is building up on series continuity when it comes to Ro. Geordi turns up and says they need to travel over to the Romulan vessel with Data and Worf, which involves getting in a shuttle when somebody else does, basically. It's the Shuttle Goddard, which gets its name from US rocket pioneer Robert H. Goddard, apparently. Data discusses planning the memorial service with Worf. Apparently the Bajorian death chant is over 2 hours long, which is not something that Ro is enthusiastic about.
Do we ever get that in DS9?
I don't think we do. I think that gets rather forgotten, really, along with the strange ridges over the eyebrows. Data reflects on his close friendship with Geordi, and Worf is happy for the deceased. For him, it's a joyful time, as they've earned a place among the honoured dead.
Which fits with later, actually, doesn't it?
It does, yes. Good stuff.
Yep.
Aboard the Romulan ship, Geordi is literally sticking his nose into the equipment.
It looks quite cool.
It looks like there's a zombie Romulan at the con as well.
It does, it's quite freaky, actually.
Mirok is acting baffled by Data's investigation. Geordi has spotted a device that can phase matter, allowing it to pass through other objects. Apparently it's something the Klingons had tried in the past, combined with a cloaking device which would enable them to hide ships in planets and avoid getting shot by phasing out. Very handy. Geordi realises they could be cloaked and phased.
Okay, that's all very well, right. But actually, I mean, it occurred to me a few scenes before, but you didn't reference them directly. But at this point, it's really cemented in my mind. If they're cloaked and phased and can pass through people and consoles,
and
why
walls.
are they not passing through the floor?
Good point. It's kind of like they're only horizontally phased. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
It's like when they get in a lift. Well, clearly the lift is lifting them up or down.
Yes.
So,
or left and
but
right.
that doesn't work if they're phased.
No. How does it work getting into a shuttlecraft? How do they not just end up being left behind in space and dying?
Oh, that didn't work, did it? Yeah.
See, before Geordi comes up with the explanation, it's confusing, but you think maybe you've got it wrong.
Yeah.
The moment Geordi says that's what's happened, you're like, yeah, and now the fact that you're not
I don't know how they could have done, but it's really something they could have done with addressing, isn't it? But
yes.
Never mind. Varel takes Mirok aside and refers to the device as an interphase generator. He suggests sticking a load of the particles in the Enterprise's engines, making it explode, which is a nice bit of deviousness from the Romulans, reminding us that they're still a threat.
Yep.
Geordi and Ro now have to find a way of warning the Enterprise. They're followed out the ship by the zombie Romulan, who's clearly phased as well, as he walks through what looks like a Romulan version of the TARDIS console.
It does!
It's worth mentioning the Romulan set design is pretty, consistent with what we've already seen. They've got the same chairs, bizarre designs, but it's all of a feel with what we've seen up till now, and it's nice. Really sort of building up some familiarity with the Romulans. Nice to have them back.
I tell you what else I like as well. Bearing in mind the episode this comes on the back of, where, the Borg are bad, but look, we'll humanise them and now they're not anymore.
Here
we've got the reverse.
Exactly, they're pally with Romulans but it turns out the Romulans are still
suddenly now
sneaky.
You're like, they are bad, actually.
Yeah.
And I just like when you put the two episodes together, I like the moral ambiguity it creates.
Yeah.
Particularly if, as we did, you're like, yes, Hugh is a new being and Crusher was right in the previous episode. Suddenly you're like, oh, maybe I'm not so certain about all of that because we're being nice to Romulans and they're shafting us.
Yes. Nicely put, darling. Shafted by Romulans? Is that an episode title? I think it might be. Anyway, Zombie Romulan travels over to the Enterprise with some engineering crew, Geordi and Ro having already done the same thing. Data has picked up 3 more chronoton fields aboard the ship. They are present in places where Geordi and Ro have been. Meanwhile, Romulan Zombie is wandering the corridors, which looks really weird because nobody's paying any attention to him because they can't see him. Geordi realises they're leaving a chronoton trail wherever they go. Ro follows Chief Brosmer to the bridge, where she's confronted by Zombie Romulan holding a disruptor at her. I don't think his character actually ever gets named, but according to Memory Alpha, he's called Parem.
No, he was called that in the CCG.
Yes,
I'm sure that's where probably they got it from.
I mean, it obviously was in the script, but, the name's never actually read out loud at any point. He's played by a chap called Brian Cousins, who will return as Croesus in Descent Parts 1 and 2. There's a connection. He orders Ro to take him to Geordi at Phaser Point, or Disruptor Point, I should say. Geordi is making Data rush around engineering, cleaning up his chronoton trail, but he then gets zapped by Data's cleaning device and finds he's slightly less phased than he was before.
See, now I want that scene speeded up with the Benny Hill music.
You stop being so rational. Try using your imagination once in a while. These aren't just random patterns. It's me.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. With Data chasing Geordi around the engineering. Nice. It's a nice effect where he's putting his hand in the console, and the console sort of bending to show that he's now got some
a bit of resistance.
Yeah.
Yes, very nice shot.
Originally, this was going to be a bottle show because it's obviously mostly based on the Enterprise, but it quite quick because of all these phase effects. It quite quickly proved quite expensive. Ro leads Parem into the transporter room, belts him, and runs for it.
Love it.
Yeah, which is very in character for Ro. The Romulan's phaser fire creates a large chronoton field, which the ship's sensors register. Ro runs through a crew member's quarters, who's fortunately got a towel wrapped around her to protect her modesty.
Yeah, I bet Drew likes the towel. It's shiny.
Shiny towel. There's a couple in another room, one of whom's Ensign Gates, as you pointed out. I hadn't realised that. And she's feeding a partner, boyfriend, husband, whatever, rather like he's a child. It's very strange.
I mean, it's supposed to be romantic, but
Is it?
Well, I'll just think of that shite scene in Attack of the Clones with the pair.
Oh, God. No, I'd rather not, thank you.
It's supposed to be... I've never found that romantic at all, personally.
Infantilising your partner is a bit... Ugh. Anyway.
Yeah.
I
choose you.
There's a fun chase which ends with Ro getting phasered to the ground. Geordi comes running in, knocking the Romulan out of the ship.
I like that. That is cool.
It is an excellent effect. He's spaced, effectively. And,
yes.
And the only thing it's missing is...
I regret nothing!
The Romulans hail the Enterprise to let them know the new engine core is ready to be switched on so they can switch off the power transfer. They're about to go to warp, but Chief Brosmer saves the day by pointing out Data thinks that they should clear the ship of chronoton fields first. Ro hopes the Chief's sweep will cure them, and they head off to 10 forward for their memorial service on the basis they're more likely to be spotted with a room full of people.
That's logical.
It is indeed. So the service involves a jazz band, which is kind of ironic because I did a funeral last week which involved a jazz band. The guy who died was a big fan of music, and we got a live jazz band. It was amazing, really good. No, unfortunately no Jonathan Frakes on the bone, but there we go. You can't have everything.
Oh, I want Jonathan Frakes on the bone.
Well, don't we all? Jonathan Frakes on the bone, episode title? Oh no, I've got a choice now.
But would he be able to sit on it properly?
I don't know. Geordie likes it, but Ro's not impressed.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
in the context of...
the memorial service generally, rather than Riker's performance on the bone. In fact, she's really not impressed with Riker and sort of phases him at point-blank range with her phased disruptor, because she's frustrated that she won't find out what he's going to say about her. Brosma reports a strong field in 10 forward, and Data tells her to flood it with anion emissions to clear it, which has an effect on Geordie and Ro, but not enough to make them visible. So Ro puts her disruptor on overload, leading to a bigger decontamination field being required, which then makes them briefly visible to Picard and Data. Repeating the process on maximum cures them of invisibleness, and Geordie orders the engines put offline and thanks Data for the funeral. Geordie is finishing off the party food with Ro, who's reflecting that she was arrogant to not believe in life after death before. Really? Well, they didn't actually die this time, so that's a bit bizarre, but never mind.
No, but it made her think, is the point.
Yes, I think that's it's supposed to be that she's reflecting on how she's never bothered giving it a thought before, and now, obviously, this kind of made her do it. So it does kind of work, but initially I'm like, what? But you didn't actually die.
No, but the point is, she was willing, once things were different, to believe that she had, and it made her question her previous arrogance. Which I like. It's like, Gene Roddenberry's dead. We can take things other than science seriously.
Geordie suggests the Federation should develop their own interface device on the basis it actually taught Ro humility. Cue cheesy laugh ending. Although, of course, ironically, the Federation will indeed develop an interface device in Season 7's The Pegasus. Remember that one?
No.
Ship sort of phased into a meteor sort of thing. So
no, don't tell me any more, because it'll mean it's new when I watch it.
Mm-hmm. Now, originally, this was going to be Troy rather than Ro that ended up being phased out, so to speak. But they felt they'd rather unused Ro this season.
Yeah,
no
true.
shit. So it's nice that they have used her, and obviously there's that nice sort of friction between her and Riker, even though he can't see her. And it's nice to have Ro and Geordie paired up. They're not really people that spent any time together before now, so it's kind of nice.
Apart from, was it Ro and Geordie getting that shit wrong with the hostage situation?
Oh, was it them together with the weird periscope device, wasn't it? Yes. In Power Play.
Because I just thought, why she seems to be, I don't know, being steered or steering herself towards an engineering bent, even though she's wearing red.
Yeah, although of course Geordie started off in red as well, so there's precedent for that. But yeah, it's interesting.
No, it just makes me wonder whether you're supposed to think that maybe she and Geordie have worked together before. Maybe they're all, you don't get a sense that they're close. Don't get me wrong.
No, but
bearing in mind
they've got
she's
a good professional relationship.
Yes, because she's supposed to antagonise people, but she at no point does Geordie seem antagonised by her.
Nope, just Riker. But all in all, I think it's a really fun story. It doesn't work when you look too closely at it, as we've proved.
Yeah.
And it does lose a bit on a rewatch when you remember how it turns out. But Burton and Forbes make a good pairing. And I'm always up for some fun with Romulans, so...
Yeah. See, I had completely forgotten the whole Romulan plot in this. As in, I remembered it was something to do with the Romulans that made them phase. So that didn't surprise me. I remembered that chronotons, well, I might not remember the terminology, but do you know what I mean? That there was this stuff and it followed them around and then they had to flood it and then they appeared. I remembered quite a lot of this, but I'd totally forgotten that the Romulans tried to effectively blow up the Enterprise. Yep. And I'd completely forgotten that there was a phased Romulan as well.
And they would have got away with it too if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Well, Ro and Geordie anyway.
Geordie's not a kid.
Yes.
But I'm afraid that this time round I just got so cross about the fact that they could go in a shuttle and a turbolift and walk on the floor.
Well, I've just glanced down at the Mark's feedback, which opens with the next phase, or how are you breathing? So that possibly isn't the only problem here. Do you want to read that? And
the Mark writes, somehow the interface device enables someone to be sufficiently out of phase with reality to move through walls, doors and other objects, but they're still able to stand on the floor. Yes! Sorry. And sit down on things and fall onto the deck and stuff without falling through. But worse, also they can somehow breathe, even though the air should just phase through their lungs.
Oh.
Is that true, or would there not be phased air?
Well, it'd only be the air that they had in their lungs at the time when they were phased. That obviously wouldn't keep them going. It would be breathed out as carbon dioxide, and then they're screwed. So yeah, that is a point.
No, good point.
It's a bit like that, which is the Deep Space Nine episode where Miles and Bashir, I think, get shrunk.
Oh, yes, and Jadzia Dax.
Yeah, and again, they couldn't possibly breathe.
No,
because they wouldn't be able to breathe in the air molecules. They'd be too big. So, anyway, best not to concentrate too hard on these things.
And they can see light that should pass their optic nerves, not hitting them. Now, that is a good point.
Gosh.
Right? Leaving them, in the real word, blind. Science! They should actually be within their phase of things in vacuum.
You know, the only problem is this has now made me think of that horrible moment in the Doctor Who Christmas special with the Sontarans, with their cloak device, which they can't find the controls of because it's cloaked. Oh, how stupid was that?
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Wait! The Romulan guy could sit on a chair?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck this. Okay, maybe had really good quad muscles? Christopher L. Bennett answers this in a spin-off novel, DTI Forgotten History, with gravity plates on ships, but bullshit is bullshit. Yeah, I think I'm with you on this one.
Gravity plates on ships. I suppose that makes some sense. Yeah, there must be some sort of shipboard gravity, which gravity's still going to affect them if they're phased, isn't it? Yeah, I can kind of buy that.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Works with floor and chairs, doesn't work with breathing and light.
Mm.
Anyway.
I don't think it would work with chairs, because the gravity field would pull them through the chair, which they'd phase through.
They'd end up with sitting on the floor. But no, they'd end up sitting on the floor of the bottom deck, surely.
Well, it depends if there's a different field each deck. But anyway, carry on.
Right. Let's not get into this too much, because I don't think it works.
No, it's not worth looking at it
I
closely.
think you're pointing out the many flaws. Anyway, once you get past the ridiculousness of the premise, this is a mostly fun episode. Rose shooting Riker is just funny. Yeah. The next phase goes a long way on the differences between Ro and Geordie's reactions to their predicament and the crew's, especially Data's, reactions to their apparent death. LaForge's complete unwillingness to accept that he's dead. Many years from now, I have an image of LaForge at the pearly gates telling St. John that no, I am not dead. So I think he means St. Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of the flaws, but it didn't stop me enjoying the episode.
Yeah, it's a fun episode that doesn't bear too close inspection. And there are a few episodes like that we've already covered, aren't there?
Yeah.
Okay, Drew had some points about the Mark's comments. Can I try and counter some of these very good points? Firstly, the artificial gravity on the ship stopped them falling through the floor. Gravity is the distortion of space-time, so everything in the universe is subject to it, phase matter or not. That was kind of the point I was making.
Okay, fair enough, yes.
It creates a stable floor they're attracted to and able to walk on. With doors and walls and so on not having artificial gravity in them, they're easily passed through. Still a problem with chairs, though.
Yeah.
Secondly, when they were phased, a huge pocket of air was also phased with them, which sticks with them as they travel around, as it is attracted to the only other things in the phased void they occupy.
Like charged particles.
Maybe.
Or magnetism.
That one might be a bit of a push, but okay.
I think they'd still run out, but I can see the principle.
Thirdly, they were phased away from normal matter, but only by a little way, enough to slip through normal matter. They were also only pushed a little out of the visible spectrum and into the infrared spectrum. So although unable to be seen by the crew, they could still see. Oh, blimey, that's too deep science for me to be able to understand, but there we go.
See, now, something like that, I did wonder about that, right? And I kind of thought that with Geordie, maybe because his visor gives him more than just human sight.
Oh, yes, Geordie's an interesting case in point, isn't he?
You know, that Geordie's visor might work, although I also thought it would probably cause him pain, because wasn't there the episode where pain in his visor was a trigger for their other things being wrong?
Yeah.
So I kind of thought he should be in pain but still be able to see, but Rose should be affected more. That's how I felt anyway. But it's interesting that there is, I know we keep talking about it, but it's a good Voyager episode where you've got these people who they deliberately phase themselves out of time and they conduct experiments on the Voyager crew. And in that episode, because they've developed the technology, they can see the crew, but the crew can't see them. Bearing that in mind, and the technology itself does get explained more within that Voyager episode, and bearing in mind that the Romulans haven't accidentally but deliberately created this technology, so I mean, I'm aware of that Voyager episode, which stands out.
And obviously, Romulans are going to know a bit about that, aren't they?
They are.
Shall we find out what both Drew and Tracy thought of this episode?
Okay, I'll be interested to know what Tracy makes of Rose Alice Band.
Hello Peter and Anne-Marie, this is Drew and Tracy giving our feedback for the next phase.
So what did you think of the episode?
Right?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I remember this from years ago. Really enjoying it. It's a superb episode.
Yes, no, I do agree. I do remember seeing this many moons ago in the Star Trek Pages bar.
Yeah, probably did.
I do remember it. Yeah, no, it was a good episode as they go.
It's great how, first of all, you don't know what's going on. Like, are they dead or what? And then there's some technological reason that they're still around.
True, but you knew that it wasn't going to be long before Geordie, sussed what was actually going on.
It's always trouble when there's a regular has like been killed or something.
They're never going to die for real. To be fair, I mean, it's always if you get like a red shirt there, then you know that it's taters bye. But no, they were never going to kill off Geordie.
No.
I love the way that Geordie, even though he knew Picard couldn't hear or see him, still had respect for him.
Yeah.
When Ro was jabbering on in Picard's ear roll, he can't hear you, love. Just leave him alone. He still had the decency to go, excuse me, Captain. And that
was a good bit.
Shows Picard is the man. We did look this up, but it was quite obvious during the episode that it was the same kind of within a year of the film Ghost, because they used the same special effects.
Yeah. It's Ghost-esque.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I expected the Righteous Brothers to be coming in at some point to be giving
There's
it
a
all.
Potter's wheel.
Yeah. In the funeral session, they should have been in the corner going, "Oh my love." I have to say it. We didn't quite catch his name, but the Romulan that turned out to be stuck in
the phased one.
Yeah, the phased one. He was Sam the Eagle from the Muppets.
Was he not?
No, we said, how are you getting through these corridors with your great big shoulder
He had
pads?
wide shoulders.
He had huge shoulders, but just...
You wouldn't want to go down a thin alley, would you, if you was a Romulan? You'd be stuck for good.
He did have a Sam the Eagle from the Muppets face going on.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, great episode.
Good episode. Loving the relationship with Geordie and Data. Data doesn't understand friendship, but Geordie is really teaching him, and Geordie, he loves Data. Love it.
It's the Romulan way. Nice. Yes, we didn't get the Ghost connection. Have you ever seen Ghost?
Yeah, quite a lot of times.
All right, I've never seen it. I'm never going to.
It's got Guinan in it.
I know it's got Guinan in it, but that's still not going to make me want to watch it. No spaceships. And
it's
no, we're not going to be
interesting.
using that music either.
Oh, it's got to be better.
So that's
than...
2 tunes we've turned down.
Yeah. We could go with the Muppets.
Maybe. And you went to Page's Bar as well.
Yes, we went to Page's Bar.
A couple of times, yeah.
Page's Bar was cool.
We caught a couple of first episodes of Deep Space Nine we saw were in Page's Bar, weren't they? So
they were.
Oh, this looks weird.
Yeah.
We saw Trials and Tribulations, didn't we?
We did.
And did you go for the Romulan ale as well and get your tongue dyed? Was it green?
Yeah.
Yeah, very odd. It was just lager, so yeah.
No, I went for a cocktail called Data's Delight. It was very orangey and quite alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. But yes, you're right. Fun episode.
Yes.
Okay, let's find out what Catbus Matt made of it.
Hello, Orgs. Catbus Matt again with some feedback for the next phase. Now, of the 2 episodes that we're covering this week, this is definitely the weaker of the 2. It's not entirely terrible. In fact, it's actually quite entertaining. But compared to the kind of heavier overtones of Borg, it's got a lot to live up to and sadly doesn't so much. Really, the twists aren't twists. There are no great shockers. I mean, the fact that the Romulan is also phased, A, is telegraphed a mile off, and B, you can blatantly see he's blue screened at the point he's about to walk through the table anyway. So, no great shakes there. Some good stuff with Ro, but she suffers, unfortunately, from comparisons to Deep Space Nine later on, because, of course, all of the religious stuff was really painted in broad strokes because they weren't entirely sure what Bajoran religion was and so forth. So when you compare that to the detailed and rich cultural notes that you get later on in DS9, you're kind of going, this is a bit vague and bollocks, and you can maybe excuse that retrospectively because she isn't really religious and she isn't really a believer, but it just doesn't quite ring true with everything that comes later. Not really the episode's fault, but an unfortunate consequence. At no point do you ever actually think that they're dead or whatever. The tension with, the Romulans are going to destroy them is pretty good, but there's never really any doubt that they're going to get rescued or danger is going to be averted. Let's face it, they were never actually going to blow up the Enterprise, were they? Because, yeah, there's the end of your show. The funeral stuff with Data, again, it's quite nice to see, and yes, that's totally true to form for Data. But yeah, otherwise it's a bit meh. It's not terrible. It's not amazing. So, anyway, I'm sorry the feedback's a bit meh as well. I don't really have much to say on this one, but keep up the good work, and I will see you again shortly. Love you, bye!
Love you, bye!
Love you, bye!
Yeah, definitely weaker than Borg. I wouldn't argue with that.
No.
And I would also agree with the fact that Rose suffers a bit, and the whole Bajoran, it is very vague, the Bajoran religion at this point, and it's obviously crafted together in a far more coherent way in Deep Space Nine. But I think it's fun enough. It's to be slightly better than meh, personally, but there we are. Let's find out what the Pie Man thinks.
Hello again, Orgs. Murray the Pie Man here to talk about the next phase. Now, I mentioned before that I actually enjoyed when I saw these in the video together. I enjoyed this more than Borg. I have to say I didn't enjoy it as much this time round. Not that it's a bad episode, actually. I still find it quite entertaining, but it is a bit of fluff. Essentially, the crew get... Geordi and Ro get phased and briefly think they're dead. Well, Ro thinks she's dead. Actually, I quite like that bit. I like the idea that Ro, with her spiritual upbringing, instantly thought they were dead, that they were ghosts, and started making peace, while Geordi's looking at it as a mystery to be solved. I did like that different approach, and it's very rare for Star Trek to show that, even though, of course, in very typical Star Trek fashion, Geordi's right. So... we have them then basically solving the mystery and trying to get unfazed because the Romulans have been nefarious and set up a trap after the Federation have gone and helped them. We do get to see, I think it's basically a kit bash of the Romulan scout ship model as the Romulan science ship, which is quite neat. And there are some nice VFX sequences. Overall, though, the episode's a bit of fun with them being invisible and phasey and wandering around the ship, sort of hijinks and shooing, really, and also we get the moments with the crew sort of dealing with the deaths. I did like Worf and Data's discussion about the funeral rites, particularly Worf's line of he died in the line of duty and there is no great honour, this is not time for mourning. I really quite like that. And as I say, it's a bit of fluff. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. While I can, in my own head and with the amount of technical stuff I've read, I can look at them being able to walk as, well, the deck plates might use energy fields which they can stand on, and the reason why, even with the ship, if the ship moves around at all, that they can be caught in the inertial dampening field or some other wibble like that. But in the end, the more you look at it, the more you say, well, hang on, yes, they're phased and can't touch anything unless they want to drag their fingers longingly over the con, or indeed in the case of Romulans, sit in a reclining chair. So yeah, with things like that, you can't help with criticism, and it's always the problem with any parts, any story which is going to involve things being phased, is you are going to run into these same problems. But overall, it is actually still enjoyable. Yes, it's a bit of fluff. It's mostly comedy, particularly the scene at the end of the party with people going on as if nothing's happening and Rose running about firing a disruptor. And obviously the chase through the ship with everyone going about their daily lives while chases happen. It's very much played fast. It's almost a comedy episode, but it's not quite. It's like they were thinking of doing a comedy episode, or they had an episode and they didn't think it was quite good enough, so they decided to just go with comedy. I'm not quite sure. Either way, yes, not up to the quality of Borg, but significantly better than the beige we've been dealing with so far. So anyway, that's all I've really got to say about that. But as always, do keep up the good work, and I will be talking to you about the next couple of episodes. Until then, bye for now.
Bye!
Bye!
And yes, you're right, Maria, there is a nice comparison between the spiritual Ro and sort of secular Geordi. And
yes.
Had it been Deep Space Nine, you never know, Ro may have been right and they may have been dead. Yeah. Let's face it, that's kind of how sort of Cisco's prophet turns out, but there you go. Well, the next time we record will be on Thursday the 6th of March, and we'll be covering possibly one of, well, certainly has a reputation of being one of the most classic episodes ever. I'm not sure I've seen it that often, certainly not seen it recently, which is The Inner Light.
Play the recorder.
I'm hoping it'll live up to its reputation, we shall see.
I can play Jesus' Hands Were Kind Hands on the recorder.
And this is why we don't let you near a recorder. And
sorry.
We'll also be covering what I seem to remember. It's one of those classic Next Generation good part first part, not so good second part stories, Time's Arrow Part 1.
Now, the name doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, we've got looking into the origin of how Guinan and Picard...
Oh, that one!
And sort of going back in time, and he's got Samuel
Somebody is
Clemens,
Mark
Twain, yeah. Which I really, didn't know who he was at the time of watching it, so it was very strange.
No, I watched The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Well, I watched it as well. I didn't know who the hell wrote it, so yeah.
No, I did. Can we find a theme tune for that, for the episode?
Possibly. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
So those are the episodes we're covering on the 6th, and just to give you the heads up, on the 20th of March, we shall be covering Emissary.
Woohoo!
Finally make our way into Deep Space Nine. Well, on the 20th, we'll only be covering Emissary, because obviously it's a longer length episode.
Yeah.
As being the pilot, so it would be fascinating to think what you make of that. I have been a bit cheeky. I've already watched it once, so I've done my pre-watch for that one because I couldn't wait any longer. I was busted.
And they haven't caught up with us. There's no Blu-ray.
There isn't, no. There's not even any Blu-ray for Season 6 of Next Gen either.
No.
Even on pre-order at the moment.
Get your skates on. We're nearly there. Yeah. What are you like?
Thank you to all our contributors.
Thank you. Really, we liked feedback.
Very much appreciated. And also some interesting discussion going on the forums as well.
Yeah, that's good too.
So feel free to put your thoughts on the Inner Light and Time's Arrow on there. Or you can look at our Tumblr page and leave comments there if you want to, which is bOrgCast.tumblr.com.
Or you can email us, bOrgCast@geekplanetonline.com, and you can send an email or email us MP3.
Yours. And I'm Rev_org on Twitter.
And I'm Ammo_purple.
Jolly good. Yay. Well, it does feel like finally things have, improved again.
Yes.
We're out of the beige phase and into the next phase. Oh, see what I did there?
Yeah.
Oh,
you hadn't planned that at all, had
finally
you?
Crafted script that we're working off here.
Yes.
See you next time, folks.
Beer is good.
Cheery bye.
Bye.
The bOrgCast is brought to you by those awesome people at geekplanetonline.com.
And alcohol.
Any sound clips used are for illustrative purposes only, and no infringement of copyright is meant.
The song at the opening of this podcast was written and performed by Adam Buxton and is used with his kind permission.